I'm going to be speaking to University of Toronto researcher Dr. Courtney Toth, who has helped develop a cocktail of microbes that eat some of the world's most widespread hydrocarbon or petroleum contaminants. So, welcome to the interview, Courtney.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I understand that you started your research at the University of Calgary. And of course, Alberta is home to hundreds of thousands of oil and gas wells. And then, of course, we have the infamous 137, the 37 oil sands tailing ponds with 1.3, 1.4 trillion liters of toxic tailings. So, cleaning up this kind of contamination is a big deal. It's an environmental liability for the industry, potentially one for the taxpayer when companies go bankrupt and nobody else can clean it up. So give us just maybe a brief overview of your research and tell us about these little microbes that the petroleum eating microbes that you've developed.
Absolutely. So as you said, I'm a microbiologist. I've been studying how microbes break down oil for the last decade. And it's been just the most fascinating topic to be a part of and to really understand what biochemically is possible in the environment. So we've known of the existence of hydrocarbon degrading microbes now for decades. And the discovery that we could break down hydrocarbons in the absence of oxygen, so these anaerobic processes where hydrocarbons persist most often, was very eye-opening. And from then, we've been trying to develop technologies that really work and employ these anaerobic microbes that are able to break down hydrocarbons. So this is what the technology is. We've developed a cocktail of hydrocarbon degrading microbes. Specifically, they're ones that break down a toxic class known as BTEX, or benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. So when we're thinking of a contaminated sites, these are often the drivers for remediation efforts because they're prefer carcinogens, toxins, and usually are the ones driving cleanup efforts.
Now, is your innovation the specific class of microbe, a new microbe, or is it the cocktail of microbes, the way they act together?
These are the same naturally occurring microbes that we would find in any hydrocarbon contaminated environment. The only difference is that we've grown them up as a cocktail in very large numbers. So anaerobic hydrocarbon degradation can happen anywhere where hydrocarbons persist naturally. The problem and the challenge is that these microbes don't naturally exist in very high abundances. So while they're able to break down the hydrocarbons, they can't do it at a rate that is meaningful for cleanup efforts. So by increasing the number of active hydrocarbon degraders, our hope is that we can speed this degradation processes up. We've been able to prove this in the laboratory, in little microcosms, little bottle experiments. We've shown that this works in column experiments, and we're just getting the preliminary data back that shows in the field this is mirroring the same trend that we saw in the lab.
So generally the way this goes is the research comes out of the lab, it goes into a demonstration project. If that's successful, it goes into a pilot project. So you basically scale it up to a pilot level. And then if the pilot project is successful, you commercialize it and begin to scale up at large scale. Where are you at in that process?
We are at the tail end now. So over the last 5 years, we have been doing the laboratory experiments. We've scaled the culture up now to several hundred liters. And we have commercialized the culture under the brand name DGG+. And we named it DGG in honor of a pioneer in anaerobic hydrocarbon degradation technology, Dr. Dunya Gilbert-Gallic. And so she's quite an inspiration to us. And we're so happy now to have this culmination of really 30, 40 years of research where we can finally employ what the nature has been able to do now for millions of years.
Now, I'm really curious. I understand that this gets the job done at a much lower cost than traditional methods. It's much faster than traditional methods. I mean, this seems like an innovation that the oil and gas industry would be all over because they get a lot of criticism for their contamination of well sites. So what's been the reaction from the industry?
So this isn't the first time this kind of technology has been out there. It has been used for the last 20 years to clean up a different type of contamination known as chlorinated ethines and solvents. So these are often dry cleaning agents. And initially the reception was, we're not sure if it works. If we think back to the 1980s, when bioaugmentation, so the use of these cultures in the field was first adopted, we were trying to use aerobic cultures to treat anaerobic systems. And that biochemistry doesn't work. Those microbes need oxygen, and if we don't deliver it, we're not able to break down those contaminants. So there was a concern that this snake oil is what they used to call it, is that these cultures were just throwing them into the ground and they're not doing anything. But it's just we didn't understand the science at the time. So now that we do have this firm grasp, we've already proven once that this technology works. We're just getting it to work for a different set of contaminants now. And the reception's been so much more positive, especially now that we're getting more data out, we're getting publications out on this technology, and getting field evidence, getting the proof of concept that industry really wants to start applying this to their own sites.
Well, as somebody who spent 5 years in the industry talking to engineers about innovations, I can tell you that, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but maybe for viewers who aren't familiar with it, the oil and gas industry is dominated by engineers. It is the most risk-averse culture that you will ever come across, and they can point as one. I remember one engineer telling me, he said, "I've got a closet full of equipment that," he was from Texas, right? "I got a closet full of these things that don't work, and why should yours not?" That's their attitude. It's just, and it takes a long time for them to test it and field test it and test it under different conditions. And then finally, oh, okay, it gets the good housekeeping stamp of approval, and then they adopt it en masse. Are you running into that kind of an attitude, or are people, are the companies a little more open than maybe they have been in the past?
What I will say is we work with quite a few engineers. So the project that I'm on is a really multidisciplinary team of researchers from across Canada. We have engineers, we have geologists, we have microbiologists, we have industry partners, even in the oil and gas industry. And they want to see this technology work, and they want to see the data. Everyone wants to see the data, especially me. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to hide anything here. We're trying to be as transparent as possible, whether the cultures work or if they don't work, or if they don't work under certain conditions, let's know why. The more transparency we have in the kind of data that we're generating, the more everyone wants to play with us. And that's been a very positive aspect from what we've done now for the last 5 years.
Good stuff. I mean, that from what I know and from what my experience, it sounds like you're on the right track, and good for you. Now, the big question here for me, I do a lot of work on the oil sands, and does this technology work on the tailings ponds?
That's a great question. We have not tested this technology in the tailings ponds. Primarily, we've been working at sites where there's historical gasoline contamination, like old gas stations. We'd love to start working on orphan wells, and that's a big common issue that we have in Alberta. We haven't tested tailings. Now, what we know from the microbiology is that several of the microbes we find in the tailings ponds are also the same ones that are in our cultures. So presumably it would work. We do have research partners at the University of Alberta who have been working with oil sands, or rather I should say, anaerobic cultures that have been enriched from oil sands tailings ponds. And so those would be perhaps good candidates to do that sort of testing on. But to my knowledge, we haven't explored it, at least in the immediate program that we're working on.
Now, I'm going to wrap up the interview by congratulating you. You got the MyTax Award for commercialization. Can you tell us a little bit about the award?
So as you said, this is presented by MyTax, and I've been an intern under the MyTax program for 3 years. This is to foster research between academia and industry. So we're bringing the expertise from academia to solve real world industry problems. And I can't think of a bigger one, and one that is more widespread as hydrocarbon contamination. It's a huge risk to environmental health. It's a huge risk to human health. And it's one that we created ourselves. So if we can get in and create a solution that is cost effective and energy effective, where we're really able to clean up these sites faster and at a fraction of the cost of the other technologies, my goal is that we're genuinely going to see the number of sites getting cleaned up to be much higher than it currently is.
I thought of one more question. When you apply these microbes at scale, in a site, what happens after they've done their job? I guess what I'm getting at is, are there unintended consequences where you introduce something into the environment, into the ecosystem, and it fixes one problem, creates another? Is there any chance of that?
That's a fantastic question, and one that we asked ourselves as well. So as part of our research, the last 3-4 years, I've been compiling documents that are hundreds of pages of length, studying each of the microbes in these mixed consortium. What are they doing? How related are they to the environment? And the answer is they're exactly the same microbes as you would already find at the site. So they will be present and they will be actively growing for as long as the contamination is available. As soon as it's depleted, those microbes aren't able to eat any other substrates that might be found in the ground. Therefore, they just die. And the site returns to what we hope is its pristine condition before the contamination happened. So that was a big thing as part of our program, is getting government approval in order to prove that these cultures wouldn't cause any harm to the environment, and getting the government stamp of approval so that we could start working on our field pilot programs.
Excellent. Well, Courtney, good luck to you, and please keep us updated on the progress of your project. And thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, and I hope we can talk soon.